You'll have to bear with me here. I've got something to show you, but I'm having to do it the Boomer Tech method because for some reason the file's corrupted and I can't put it into my video editing software. But this is from the show Deadwood, and this is my favorite character, Al Swearingen. He pretty much sums up how I feel about the system.
Yes, I suppose so.
These inchmas coming after us, Merrick, they're fucking rough. They're going after our nuts. They're hypocrite cocksuckers. And the fucking lying tactics and instruments they use to fuck people up the ass can be turned against them.
But what I wanted to talk about is what I would call unifying factors. And it only makes sense to unite against a common enemy, to pool your resources and to come together. And as Swearingen had mentioned, the system is our common enemy. He was talking about in that video clip the town of Deadwood. It was going to either be annexed by Montana or the Dakota Territory. And they were trying to find a solution that was as beneficial to them as possible. But you see, the system is our common enemy. And it's going after our balls. Literally. I'm not exaggerating here. Now, on this side of things, we are looking, myself included, we look for what we would call unifying factors. The term dissident right is a term that I've grown to detest in a way the last several months. I am extremely tired of the entire left-right dichotomy. And to be honest, the right wing, in my opinion, it is exceedingly impotent. And I'm talking about conservatives, anything that is considered right wing. It's extremely impotent. And unfortunately, I believe this applies to us as well. The reason for this is one thing that I notice, and I've harped on this before, there's a whole lot of complaining on this side, a whole lot of bitching. And don't get me wrong, there is a fucking ton of things to be bitching about. But after a while, once you've been in this for a while, you know, I'm sick of seeing whites being beaten senseless by the darker races. This just reinforces this victimhood narrative, and I think that is just demoralizing, to be honest. I want to see the tables turned, if you know what I mean. And I mean, I understand. We don't have borders in our respective Western nations. It's virtually non-existent. But what I'm interested in, you know, and after seeing this for a while, it's like, you know, okay, I understand. This is what's happening. What can we do to mitigate this? What can we do to stop this? Or what can we do to insulate ourselves from this? You know, I just hear a lot of complaining a lot of times, and I grow tired of it. What I'm interested in is solutions. And I do, to our side's credit, whatever you want to call our side, I'm just a racialist, a white racialist. Could call me a white nationalist. I'm more of a tribalist, to be honest. Because I do believe that Dunbar's number is a very true concept. But regardless, there are people on our side who are doing things, I believe, to provide a solution. But going back to these unifying factors, some people seek out unifying factors in religion, through Christianity, or European polytheism or paganism. And myself, when I started this channel, I was fairly anti-Christian. But over time, I have toned that back. I still have my Odinist worldview, you could say. But I understand Christianity is a part of our people's history. It just is. And I have no desire to, just bicker incessantly over religion. I believe what I believe. You believe what you believe. Lately I've read about Pastor Richard Butler. He was the leader of the Aryan Nations Church of Jesus Christ Christian. This was a Christian identity church. And I am not a fan of the Christian identity ideology myself. I'm not a fan of Anglo-Israelism. I don't believe we are the Jews or God's chosen people. We are Aryans. We are Native Europeans. But what Richard Butler had going on back in the 70s and 80s, I see it for what it was. It was a valuable thing because it drew people together with our worldview, with our blood from all across this country. That book that I had mentioned, The Bruder Schweigen, Volume 1 in my last video, Mr. Da Silva talks a lot about the Aryan Nations Congress that he attended in 1983. And there's a lot of important names in our movement's history that was present there. There was Robert J. Matthews. There was David Lane. David Lane and Matthews had more of an Odinist worldview. But they did see what Richard Butler had going on. They seen it, and they seen that there was a lot of good that could come from it. So they set aside their differences in religion. And here today what we see, there's NRX, I believe is what they call it, neo-reactionary. I am not really much of a fan of neo-reactionary ideas. I do think Nick Land is an interesting character. But these people, these big names in these internet circles that espouse these NRX views, they have huge channels, extremely large channels. And, I guess that is their unifying factor. I think a lot of them are into Catholicism, they're monarchists. Honestly, I find a lot of the stuff boring, but hey, if it helps unify people, I guess, have at it. Just as long as you keep in mind that the blood is what we are trying to preserve, the Native European blood. On the Odinist side, we have, the Asatru Folk Assembly. This is another sort of unifying factor. I have a friend in real life who has become involved quite heavily with this here recently, over the last several months. And it's a good thing to have these unifying factors. Some people use religion. Some people use political or ideological methods, which honestly I think really it's all just a mixture of these things. Some people think that a unifying factor is going out and joining a political, public-facing group that advocates for our people. This is a good way, I suppose, to get contacts, to get in touch with people. Although I have to say myself, I am leery of large groups of so-called white nationalists. Because these groups, it's up to you. I can't tell you what to do. You can go for it. I can't tell you what to do. And I understand why people want to do this. But to be honest, I don't think it's my cup of tea. The only sort of public-facing groups that I am partial to, I guess here in this country, would be the active clubs, because they are grounded in self-improvement. Self-improvement, I mean, our people, we have failed a long fucking way. Just within a few generations. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. Self-improvement is key. But you know, the reason that I am leery of these public-facing groups is I wonder how effective they are, but also it's the risk that comes attached with it. Large crowds tend to draw in snitches, informants, agents. And I absolutely hate all three of these things, and I have no desire to be around any of them. But I guess you have to learn how to navigate in that type of world. Any large group, doesn't matter. There's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 informants in it. That's just the nature of the beast. And you have to be cautious, and you have to watch what you say. And I mean, this applies online as well. I've spoke about this recently. You have to watch your fucking mouth. Now, I'm more in favor of networking. I'm not a member of any sort of public-facing group, but I do have a sort of network. And within that network, I have what I would call my little group of people that I've met in real life. I think I've met about 15 people since I started this channel. I've traveled a few hours to see them. Some of them have traveled a few or even several hours down here to stay with us. And I enjoy doing this. You have to be cautious with doing things like this, of course. If anyone ever gives you like a bad vibe, you don't have to meet them. You know, listen to your gut, listen to your intuition. But I do believe that truly to get the measure of a man, you do have to meet them in person. And this ain't everybody's cup of tea, and I understand. The only reason I've been able to meet these people is just because I have this channel. And I do understand why, like I mentioned, that people join public-facing groups for this reason. But what I see as the greatest unifying factor is quite simple. You could say that the blood is the unifying factor. Our DNA, our racial characteristics. You could say this is the greatest unifying factor, and I do understand this, but I think people underestimate the complexity of all the different native European peoples. I mean, if you look at it, we have killed each other off for millennia. We have fought each other, and partially I think that is what had made us so successful. When you compete against the best, it makes you stronger. Now, people underestimate, I think, the complexity. And I mean, even here in these circles that we are in, I'm not going to call it the DR because I'm sick of that term, but whatever this is, it's extremely fractured, and people are looking for the unifying factors. They're doing this online. And while there is, I guess this can gain some traction, the greatest unifying factor of all, in my opinion, is proximity. It is building a family and a community. Building a family is paramount. If you're a young man, find you a woman. Do what it takes to find yourself a suitable mate. Same thing for young women, although I don't think many young women watch my channel. Same goes for you. Do what you need to do to find a suitable partner. Now, building community. You see, one of the problems with this online culture is that there's really very little accountability. There's not a lot of accountability in these circles. And you know, I've talked a lot about the revolutionary mindset because I do think our people's salvation will require a revolutionary mindset. But you cannot build a revolutionary movement solely online because, as I said, there is little to no accountability. To build a revolutionary movement, you have to interact in real life. There has to be accountability there. You have to look your brothers and sisters in the eye, and you have to be held accountable. Treachery is rampant on this side of things online, and even in real life. You know, that's why I like to look at the history of the movement, which in my opinion, as my friend Josh would say, fuck the movement, support the cause. But looking at the history of the movement, this treachery, it's been an unfortunate reality as well. That's why I like looking at the history of the movement, because there's a lot of the answers. You know, a lot of us think that this is something new. This is nothing really new. This has been going on for decades. And we must learn from the past. We must learn from 1.0, as they call it. White nationalism 1.0. We must learn from them, because a lot of the problems they had back then are the problems that we face today. The only added layer to our current situation, I believe, is the advent of technology. But the greatest unifying factor is proximity, building community, being accountable to those closest to you. You know, it's easy to throw someone under the fucking bus if you've never met them in real life and they're across the country or across the world. Most people do this without flinching. But if you're in proximity with each other, it still happens, but much less in my opinion. And if it does happen, well, the roosters come to crow eventually, as it should be. Accountability. Proximity is the greatest unifying factor. Now let me switch gears briefly. People look for the unifying factor. If you want a surefire unifying factor, other than proximity, I would say it's accelerationism. And I know accelerationism is a very... people are frightened by it. People are turned off by it. Some people are. Really, shared adversity is the greatest unifying factor. There's proximity, and then there's shared adversity. You got to be in proximity with each other to share adversity. Trauma-based pair bonding. Now there's trauma-based mind control, of course, but what I'm talking about here is trauma-based pair bonding. When you endure hardship with people around you, there is a bond that is formed. There is a brotherhood or sisterhood that is formed. Hard times make for hard men, and they make for hard bonds. Trauma-based pair bonding. It's a word of the day, or the phrase of the day, I guess you could say. I mean, and this is why men that go out in combat together, they develop a strong bond. Even people that engage in criminal activities together, there is a strong bond formed there. Hardship, adversity, trauma-based pair bonding. But anyways, you know, this is just this is stuff that I've spoke about before. Feel free to let me know in the comments if there is any unifying factors that I've left out here. I'm sure there is. And I'm interested to see what you might think yourself. But anyways, I'm gonna go grab some lunch. Is there anything else? I believe that sums it up. Thank y'all for watching. Bye-bye.